filtration system. So, I mean, I guess my concern is that if those tailings are left in place, can we be confident that that capture system would work in perpetuity? You know, because that's really the alternative, right, to removal. And for an area of tailings with, you know, with groundwater that is as contaminated as it is, you know, is that the most long-term protective solution to leave it in place? So I'm glad that you're still continuing to look at this, and then also I appreciate the comments from Marco today, but to me that's a pretty critical question.
Well, I'll kind of go back to the decision, and we've already made a decision in the record of the decision. I mean, that was the point, was
right.
We made a decision. And
right, but yes, arguably before you had complete information.
Well, you can make that argument about when is it complete information, and I would argue you never had complete information. So at some point, you have to make the best decisions you can with the information you have. You make that decision, and then you are in the process of continually evaluating that decision. So there are a couple of things that go along with that. Yes, we are continuing to evaluate that decision and how effective it is. The argument about whether or not you'd remove the tailings and then not have to treat, we're going to be treating anyway. I don't think anybody can sit here and tell you that even if you remove the pair of tailings, that those tailings are going to be cleaned up even in 100 years. I mean, those were some conservative assumptions. Conservative in terms of assuming that you're going to get real complete flushing of the aquifer and how many core volumes it would take, and so those were pretty optimistic even in that light. So I don't think in any real sense, in any real time frame, that or at least, you know, that we're gonna see a completely clean aquifer, even if you clean up. So that now we're continuing to evaluate that. But I don't think, and the reason I say, the reason that we haven't gone back and rerun the model and reevaluated everything is because that answer right now, just the hydraulic conductivity, is not going to change that answer. And it's not real important, you know, exactly what the number is, because nobody can sit there and run a model and tell you that that's going to be the answer in reality, because there's so many assumptions that go into it. So really what we're trying to do right now is to finish getting the remedy completely implemented, continue to monitor it, and see whether there are any gaps in the system, whether there's anything we've missed, trying to answer the questions. A lot of the questions with respect to groundwater are, what's happening with that middle zone? Where's it coming? Where's it going? Where's it daylighting? Is it impacting the creek? You know, is it getting to areas that would expand the plume or continue contamination on the downstream end of silverbowl? So a lot of those are things we're trying to answer, and it's really just that continual process. This area has seen so much mining that we're always going to have waste in place. We're always going to be having to evaluate the decision and whether or not there are additional things that need to be done.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that. But in the long term, for long-term protectiveness, wouldn't it still be better to be treating water, even if you have to continue to treat it? Treating water that is less contaminated rather than water that is more contaminated?
Well, and we're trying to get to some of that, like segregating some of in the metro storm drain, segregating some of the clean, trying to figure out ways to segregate the clean water from becoming contaminated. The volume of water is not going to, we need to treat, is not going to be reduced by removing the pair of tailings. I don't think anybody can tell you that. It may or may not reduce the contaminant load, but really the treatment costs for that water are driven by the water chemistry. They're driven a little bit more by the alkalinity and what you have to do to treat the water to get those metals to drop out to a level that's going to meet standards, rather than by the specific amount. You know, there's an economy of scale there, depending on how contaminated, you know, regardless of whether it's a little bit contaminated or a lot contaminated, the treatment costs, at least in the treatment system we've got there, is more driven by the water chemistry than other things in the water than simply the contaminants that you're trying to remove. So those are other factors that, you know, that go into that decision.
Joe, I'm Matt Vincent. I'm going to speak as a citizen today. Would you agree with the statement that this is a very complicated issue?
Yes, absolutely.
And that BIPSU, Butte Priority Soils Operable Unit, is one of the more, if not the most complex and complicated operable unit in this Clarkport complex.
It's pretty complicated for a number of different reasons, yeah.
Yeah, and it's at the headwaters too.
Yep, yep.
I've been working on this project back when I used to work with Butte, so we've known for about almost 20 years now. And I would agree with you, and I think it's even gotten more complicated.
The more you find out, the more questions you have.
So the question I have for you is, less than 10 years ago, we had 3 remedial project managers, 2 for the priority soils and 1 for the Berkeley pit. It's just as complicated, if not more complicated. You guys now have 1 remedial project manager in charge of the priority soils and the Berkeley pit. I would come to the conclusion to ask you, how do you think that's effective, and how do you think our community is supposed to make do with 1 person when we used to have 3, and for the sake of your 1 project manager, why you're not getting her some more help on this?
Well, as far as I understand it, in the Helena office, we're down, I think we're down, I don't even know how many staff from previous years, and I think that's just kind of the reality of federal government in particular. And basically what it means is that is not shortchanging, but trying to rely a little bit more on some of the contractor support, and trying to rely more on other resources within the agency. Folks in the region with particular specialties in hydrogeology and toxicology and some of those. So it's a big project. The other thing that's going on is that hopefully with the issuance, with the ROD that was issued in 2006 and trying to get all this stuff, hopefully we're focusing more on getting the remedy implemented, and instead of the investigation phase where you're going all directions and you're trying to get a handle on everything that's going on out there, hopefully we've gotten to the point where we've made some decisions, and so now what we're focused on is getting those things implemented and then making sure that we're monitoring those and collecting additional information and trying to make sure that those decisions and those remedies are protective, and if not, what additional things we need to do. Yes, I know Sarah works a lot of hours, and we rely on her a lot. So, but right now we're that's kind of where we are, and hopefully we're not. I know Sarah tries to cover everything, and the state helps us out, as well on trying to make sure that we're covering all the issues. So, yeah, I'd love to be able to have unlimited resources, from a staffing standpoint, but that's not real. So, regardless of funding issues.
I'm Joe Griffin.
The other Joe.
I'm the other Joe. and I'm with the state. I'm with the Department of Environmental Quality. I'm a local project officer. So I've been party to all of these meetings and discussions for a while. This isn't a question, Joe. This is a statement, really. And I want to really clarify some things. First of all, currently, have we been addressing groundwater that gets to surface water? Made huge improvements. I mean, it's really amazing the amount of improvements we've made right now. As far as the parrot and what's to be done with it, I fully understand where EPA is coming from. The question really is for them, I guess, is even if they remove it, is it going to meet water quality standards? And they have a certain reason to have that caution, because they've been caught forcing industries to spend a lot of money and then found out that it wasn't particularly effective. So I think that's part of where that comes from. And I also understand fully, I think everybody does, where Atlantic Richfield's coming from. Is they're looking to get this done, but they're looking to get it done for the best cost. And of course, they would do that. but is where the state comes from in this, and we started out documenting this in our letter in the back of the record of decision. You know, we didn't agree with the decision not to remove the parrot, and I would add the diggings east. It's another serious source, so let me just throw that one out there. And it really hasn't changed, our attitude really hasn't changed at this time, and the way we look at it, well, it's really the way streamside tailings is going. We took over the remedy there, and we've managed to remove more rather than less of the tailings, and we really removing tailings out of the stream to the extent practicable. So we believe that removing the source of contamination is the best way to go. And it goes to, it really goes to what Chris was bringing up. It's long-term protection. And the real question to ask in this whole thing is, where will Butte be in 20 years? Where will ARCO be in 20 years? Where will EPA be in 20 years? So, will it be more protective in the long term to remove the parrot tailings? I would say, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a better way to protect it. Will it clean up to a drinking water standard in 100 years? I have no idea. And it is very difficult, as Joe said, I don't know that you can really answer the question. At best, we could bracket it, and I don't even think the bracket would be very satisfactory. You know, it'd be such a wide bracket. So, there were a couple of things. So, anyways, the way this is set up now, and the EPA's decision is that we will capture this water and we'll treat it. And there's still some problems with that. And a lot of this is under discussion. It looks pretty clear that we're probably capturing the upper alluvial unit, the contaminated portion of the upper alluvial unit. And it's contaminated in two places, I think. Anyways, my read on the data now is it's contaminated by the parrot, and then there's kind of a gap, and then it's contaminated again by the diggings east. And the real question is that middle alluvial unit, the one that we now know transmits a lot of very contaminated water. And we've followed that plume down a fair ways, and there's an argument about how far down that goes. But answering the question of, is the subdrain capturing that water, again, we haven't run any tests. There's indications that it could be. I wouldn't say that it's not, but nobody can say that it is either. So we're sort of left with some of those questions hanging there, real questions about whether we can fully capture that middle alluvial unit. And we're also left with the question of, what does it mean to run a capture and treatment system in perpetuity? So if it fails in 50 years, would it be better to have the parrot dug out? Yeah, I think it would be.
Would you explain the middle alluvial unit? What? Or not explain it, but
No, that's fine. It's a good question. So with some of the drilling, and particularly with the pumping test that we ran lately, we realized that the aquifer can kind of be characterized as an upper unit, a middle unit, and a lower unit. And they sort of have different aquifer properties. And this middle alluvial unit sort of works, I guess it's fair. I would call it sort of a pipeline that's carrying contamination along. And it's at a depth of, say, 40, 50, 60 feet
all
down.
over.
Well, the part we're talking about is really along the metro storm drain, and it's underneath the parrot. So I don't know what all over means, but that's...
No, but I meant in our, next to the creek, in the creek area.
Right. And
it's so far wider.
And it's a difficult thing, but at least for a portion, for a distance down gradient of the parrot, it's pretty easy to recognize this middle alluvial unit. It's less distinct when you get down there. It's another question. You got a lot of water going along this pipeline, and then the pipeline's not there, but the water keeps moving. So exactly where